Thanks for listening to the Healthy Church Podcast with Larry Barker and Drew Klein.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on the Healthy Church Podcast. My name is Drew Klein, here with my friend Larry Barker. Larry, you and I were trying to dodge the tornado here as we get this thing going.
Yeah, this
is
people don't know it, but this is our third attempt to try to pull off this podcast. So we're going to be persistent, if nothing else.
Yes, this is important. We got to get this done. Larry, you guys are on the road, but tell us a little bit about what we're headed, the direction we're going today for the podcast.
Well, I'm just real passionate about developing listening skills. Being a talker by nature, I spent a large part of my early ministry more focused on what I'd say next than on actually listening to the person. And I heard a great statement the other day by Mark Clifton that before you tell someone, I disagree with you, you ought to first be able to say, I understand what you're saying. And that's the importance of listening. And the Word of God's very clear. Be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And so we need to make sure we're really listening to that other individual. So I kind of wanted to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of that saying, another saying that says that we listen to respond, and so when somebody says something to you that tweaks your heart or whatever, and you feel like, okay, you can get defensive, at least for me, all of a sudden you end up wanting to just, respond immediately instead of really taking the time to do what you're saying, which is, where's this person coming from, and how can I get in his shoes or her shoes and just really think about what it is that they're feeling, and respond with that kind of a heart. I think it's a great thing we need to learn.
Yeah, we're going to have my good friend Keith Webb on here talk about coaching, and he's the one that first I went to that training many years ago, and it just really challenged me to work on listening better. And here's the reality. I'd love for people to think about, how do you feel when you can tell somebody's not really listening to you? And the reality, Drew, is you never value a person more than when you listen to them, and you never devalue them more than when you're unwilling to listen to them.
Yeah, I think about that moment where, whether it be in church or if you preached or if you did a concert, that some of my history, and you're talking to somebody but they're always looking over your shoulder instead of that direct connection in their eyes and heart for what you guys are talking about. It can be a rough thing.
It can, because we can tell when somebody's not really listening. I mean, by what you just described, or I've even been talking to someone, you can just kind of tell their eyes glaze over, and they're not really connected at that moment. And there's other ways too, but I can be easily distracted. And when I'm talking to someone, I try to make sure I'm really focused, because of the importance of eye contact and body language, and you can train your mind to listen better. So I just wish all of us would think about how it makes us feel when we don't feel like we're being listened to.
Sure. You got to listen with intent.
Exactly. So my good friend Steve Ogney, that's in heaven now, I loved what he said about coaching, but I want to say something here. Listening skills are important in friendships. Wow. Marriage. Think about, the top two problems in marriage is finances and communication. I was talking to friends this morning, and I said, hey, and I was teasing them, I said, do you guys talk real well to one another? And they both, oh yeah. And I looked at her, I said, well, does he listen? She goes, well, now that's another subject. So we got to make sure in our communication that we're listening well. But Steve Ogney said this. Now, this is profound. If you're talking, you are not listening. That's deep, ain't it?
It's simple, but I know what he's trying to get to here.
Yeah, exactly. So
Makes sense.
it does make sense. And I mean, I, I love this when I'm talking to someone and I'm focused on making sure I'm following them. Here's one little skill that you can use. Hey, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying this. And what it
Mm-hmm.
shows is, number one, you're really listening. And number two, if you're not hearing the right thing, you can get back on track. That you're giving them permission to say, you know what, really that's not what I was saying at all. And I wonder how many of us have at one time in our life or another somebody goes, so what you're saying is, and you go, no, that's not what I was saying at all. And so
Yeah.
it's just working on making sure that we're communicating well, but also we're listening well. And that's a big
Yeah.
part of our prayer life too, Drew. It's not just us talking to God, but God speaking to our hearts and through his word, and that we're taking time to slow down and say, you know, Lord, just like Samuel, Lord, your servant's listening. What do you have to say? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's key to this area of communication, discipleship, mentoring, coaching, all the above.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. This is especially helpful. I'm just thinking, maybe because I've been doing some premarital counseling, but I'm just thinking how wonderful this will be for married couples.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. We were talking to a couple just the other day, and they were talking about that. You know, how do we develop that? And Swindoll has a great chapter in one of his old books on marriage. And it's one of the best things I ever read, and it says how to fight fair, you know, and drawing boundaries and communicating and finding out, you know, and everybody does this. Okay, you said this, but I think you really meant this. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what we're talking about. How can we better be able to understand what they're really saying?
Right. Well, what are the steps you're thinking on how we can learn how to do this a little bit better?
Well, one is listen with your mind, and that really can be a something that you can develop and that you can uh, work on focusing. For example, Drew, when I really want to have a great conversation with someone, I don't need to be where I can see a lot of things going on. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a I'm a people watcher. I notice different things. If somebody's walking in and I'm at a coffee shop, I'm gonna I'm gonna glance over, see what's going on. So what I try to do so that I can really be focused with my mind is, first of all, really tell myself, you know what? I want to make sure I'm in the frame of mind. I'm focused on you. So I'm going to even position myself where I won't easily be distracted.
Right. That's good. Just continually be thinking, what is she trying? What are they trying to communicate? How can I, say this back in such a way that makes sure that I'm understanding it correctly, and don't just speak to respond. Listen to
That's a
understand.
great point. You want to focus on, okay, what's behind their words, and
Yeah.
what are they saying, and you want to not allow your mind to wander. And everybody's mind can wander, but you got to fight that. You got to, I was even telling our church, are you taking full opportunity of worship when you're in that setting by being
Mm.
totally focused and not being an observer, but being a participant? And are you taking
Mm-hmm.
advantage of that? Because, man, we can be distracted by so many things. And of course, one of the best things when you're listening to someone is put your phone up, so
Yeah.
that,
Absolutely.
or turn it off so that the beeps or the notifications do not distract you.
Yeah. Think about Paul saying, uh, "Take captive your thoughts,"
Yeah.
and this is exactly the kind of thing you're speaking
That's
of.
a great point. That's a great
All
point.
right.
And that brings us to number two. Make sure you're listening with your body. I try not to lean back, and I know different settings are different, the chairs you're in can dictate this, but I want to make sure they can tell I'm interested and that I'm making good eye contact. I've already mentioned that. My arms aren't crossed, but they're by my side, because arms crossed kind of give a negative connotation. I'm going to make sure that my nonverbal signals, like my head nodding, or whatever else. And I'm just going to go on record. If you're listening to somebody and your eyes are closed, that's not a good thing.
That will get you in trouble with your marriage.
Yes,
sure.
it will. So you just want to, your body language needs to say, let me back up. Need to make sure it doesn't say I'm tolerating this conversation, but I'm interested, I'm listening. And people read body language a lot. If you're exasperated or you roll your eyes, you're going to get caught at that, and that's not a good thing.
One, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about just some awareness that I've learned to have in the last few years is sometimes in a passionate conversation, I'll say, listen, I'm getting passionate because that's who I am, but don't just know that I'm working through it in my mind. I'm processing what you're saying, and I'm coming back at you with passion because that's who I am and that's what I'm feeling because I love you. So even those kind of communication pieces, as you're thinking about your own awareness and trying to communicate, I think those are good things.
I do think they're very good things to do. I love that, because you've really brought us back in, or mentioned number 3, not brought us back in because we hadn't mentioned it yet. But you're going to listen with your mind, you're going to listen with your body, but then you're also going to listen with your words by what you just said. Hey, listen to me. And you want to paraphrase what they're saying. You want to ask clarifying questions. That's why I love checking back in. Okay, if I'm hearing you right, here's what you're saying. And here's another thing with your words. Don't finish their sentence for them. Let them finish what they're saying. And then check in when you know they've completed what they're saying.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Man.
Yeah, and another thing when you're listening, don't give advice or solution. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Let me tell you what happened. No, let them finish. Don't add in yet. Matter of fact, Drew, especially when I'm coaching or I'm having a counseling session, I just want to make sure that I wait, and I even ask, hey, if I'm hearing you right, here's what you're saying. And then I'll go, can I speak to that for a minute? Or do you have more that you want to offer? And a lot of times I go, well, actually, I think there's a couple more things you need to know. Okay, go right ahead. But ask for permission before you go off telling them. And here's something we didn't talk about in the early stages, but I think everybody needs to draw a continuum on a piece of paper. On the left, put teller, and on the right, put asker, and decide which one are you the most. And I know this shocks you, but I'm more a talker. I am, and I said asker, I actually meant listener. And which am I more? But Shelby's much more a listener. She's really going to listen far more by nature. But here's what I want to say to everybody out there. But that doesn't mean you can't become a better listener.
Sure. Well, I'm even thinking like sometimes I'll get an idea or a story that I want to apply, and I'm afraid I'm going to forget it, so I interject. But I think it'd be okay to take a note or to put out your phone and say, hey, you know what? I'm not texting. I'm taking notes to what you're saying because I want to be able to speak back to it when you're ready for me to. That could even be a helpful.
Dude, you get a gold star for that one. Hey, but hey, man, you're exactly right. And I do the same thing. I say, now listen, I'm going to be taking notes during this time, but that's because I want to come back to some things if we need to, but I want you to be able to tell me everything that you want me to know. So I'm going to be asking clarifying questions, and that's number 4. Listen with your intuition. the meaning behind the words, the gestures, their body language. What are they not saying? Because a lot of times you can tell, I'm not really getting the full story here. And so sometimes I'll go, hey, I could be wrong, but I feel like there's more to this story than you're telling me. Is there anything else that I need to know or I need to hear? Years ago, Drew, true story, I went into a house that I got asked to come over in a marital dispute. When I got there, buddy, it was lit up. It was interesting. And she said, he hit me. And Drew, I don't handle that well. I don't. And man, I lit into him. Drew, he immediately began to weep. He was brokenhearted. True story, Drew. And I went, what were you thinking? And he goes, Brother Larry, I'm sorry, but when she threw that hot bacon grease on me, it was just a reaction. I kid you not, buddy. And I went, well, you dummy, you should have heard the whole story before you lit into that guy. But she got mad, threw hot bacon. They're standing by each other, threw bacon grease on him, and just out of reaction, he unfortunately hit her. And so there was more to the story. I'm still not saying that was right, but it was a different scenario than he just went over and wanted to to abuse her. And because I'm not for that at all in any way, shape, or form. But you got to hear the full story.
Right. Absolutely, we do.
So listen with your intuition.
All right, so we're gonna.
Huh?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, just listen with your intuition and make sure you're watching their body language, that there's not more to the story. And don't be afraid to ask, hey, is there more here you want to tell me?
Yeah, no, that's good. Listen with your mind, listen with your body, listen with your words. You're mentioning intuition. That's good stuff.
And then most importantly, listen with the Holy Spirit. I tell people all the time, if you're a believer and they're a believer, there's not two people in the conversation, there's three. And I can honestly tell you, there have been times when people have been talking, I've been saying, Lord, if you don't help me here, I don't have a clue what I'm going to say. And I've just been crying out to him, but you need to ask him for spiritual discernment. And if you're hearing from the Holy Spirit, just ask him, hey, Lord, do I need to share this with them or not? And should I? And be seeking his face on this and don't over spiritualize. Oh, I got a word from the Holy Spirit that you need to hear. Hey, there's something I kind of feel like maybe I should share with you. Do you mind if I tell you something I feel like is going on here? And here's what I'll do. I'll share it, and then I'll go, does that bear witness with your spirit or not? Am I totally off there? Because I could be. And give them that opportunity, because you just want to check back in to make sure that they're listening, you're listening, and allow the Holy Spirit of God to speak to their lives.
Yeah, man, that's good. Very good.
So those are just 5 ways that we can listen better. But I just want to tell everybody a personal testimony. You know what I found out, Drew? As much as I like to talk, listening is fun. Listening is fun, man. You find stories out. I was sitting with David Dixon, missionary for the BMA for 51 years, and we were on a trip to the Bronx with our church planner, and we met in the breakfast room, and we started talking about his missionary experience. Buddy, I had goosebumps and had the hair on the back of my neck standing up, and just his testimonies and what he was telling me. And I was like, oh my. I've sat down with older pastors, and I had one say, oh, you don't want to hear this old preacher's stories. And you know what? If we'll stop and listen, we can learn so much. And we'll have a much better understanding of who they are, what they've been through, and guess what? How we can apply some of the lessons they've learned to our life. So I just got to tell you, listening to others can be a lot of fun. And I found out if I'd shut up, I can learn a lot.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say the same exact thing. It's amazing how much you can learn about people or what's really on their heart if you just kind of stay quiet and let them get to what it is that's on their soul, it's on their mind. They'll get around to it if you will just hang out and wait for it, and love them well to listen.
A very good friend of mine, I've known a very long time, Drew. I heard a story yesterday I'd never heard before. And my appreciation for him so greatly increased. But he told me his parents were divorced when he was very young. And he said, Larry, there were several weekends when my dad was supposed to pick me up that I would just sit at the door waiting for him, and he never showed up. And oh man, I just wanted to weep. I did.
Yeah.
And then told me more about the story. Told me how he and his dad finally talked, and then he found out there was more to the story than he realized, and how they reconciled that and came to be very good terms. But it didn't change. I'm sorry, it didn't change my compassion for him. I just can't imagine a little boy sitting there waiting for his daddy to pick him up, and not knowing why didn't he show up, and I'm like, wow, and it was just because we were talking, and I asked him, man, I didn't know that. Tell me more about that. And as he did, I was just like, wow, dude, my appreciation for you and what God has done in your life was just that much more. But, you really don't know what's going on in someone's life until you slow down and you listen.
Yeah, no, I love that. Very good. Of course, it's also the second step of the Bless initiatives. We've talked about those, and so it's an important thing.
It is.
Larry, what else would you give us on this topic as far as listening? I'm just thinking about a lot of times the folks that listen to us are in ministry, and a lot of times ministry leaders, they have to be pretty good at communicating, but I have a feeling this is a needed lesson to be learned, because we might be able to speak or be instant in season and out of season to share something or lead something, but we might not be as good at listening. So this is helpful.
Yeah, I think if you are task oriented, especially, you need to be very careful that you don't pass through the crowds without noticing the people, and so especially on Sundays. And our Bible studies, it doesn't have to be Sunday. Whenever you are with your people, take the time to talk to them. That might be the only opportunity that they have to build a relationship with you, and stop and slow down and forget about the task and think about the time the disciples, basically were telling, he doesn't have time for you. And Jesus does what? No. Yes, I do.
Right.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Suffer not the little children to come unto me. Let them come on. I want to talk. No, that lady with the issue of blood. Yes, I do want to have a conversation with him. So we need to be careful, because I'm by nature people oriented. I am, and I love to communicate and talk. But if I have a task in front of me, I have to be very careful that I don't go by people. And you say, yeah, but I can only give 30 seconds or 10 seconds to this one or that one. No, don't think that way. Think of the value of that person. Slow down and talk to them.
Well, Larry, how would you finish up our conversation today? Or do you have anything that you would finish this up with today?
Well, sometimes repetition is a good thing, so I'll say it again.
Sure.
You never value someone better than when you listen to them, and you never devalue them more than when you're unwilling to listen. So listen. That doesn't mean you're going to agree. It doesn't mean you will not disagree. It doesn't mean you got to do what they say, but it does mean you value their input, you value them as a person, and you're going to listen to what they're saying.
Love that. I think I would just, the last thing I might say, I was just thinking about when Jesus healed the man who was deaf and dumb, and he takes him aside, and he says that he puts spit in his eyes, and he's in a private place. He touches his tongue. All these things are like a way to communicate lovingly to him. And
Yes.
I think that's the kind of thing you're talking about, is how we can lovingly communicate by listening and being patient, waiting, taking notes if we need to, speaking back the things that have been said. Those are all wonderful tools to help us in communication. So thanks for this today, Larry. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, brother. And I'll stay on.
Okay. Friends, if there's anything we can do for you or we can help you with anything, please don't hesitate to let us know. info@healthychurchpodcast.com. We have battled tornadoes today and the road and the cell towers, but I think we got it finished, and I think it's been a blessing to talk about how we can be better listeners. So I hope this is a blessing to you. Hey, thanks for joining us. We look forward to talking to you next time on the Healthy Church Podcast.
For more information and other resources, go to healthychurchpodcast.com.